Good morning, this is Rob Shaw from GRAF, and today we're going to be talking about water and Northeast Africa. This made the headlines recently when Donald Trump suggested that Ethiopia would need to be careful if they didn't want their new dam blown up by Egypt. We're going to be talking a little bit about that and explaining why Donald made that statement. So let me fire up my PowerPoint and let's get going. Water Wars is the title today. Water, water everywhere, nor any drop to drink. That's an ancient mariner's saying, and it's all based on the fact that some poor sailor stuck in a boat in the middle of the ocean, dying of thirst and no water anywhere that he can actually drink, even though he's sitting in a big pile of water. The first law of thermodynamics was written down by Rudolf Clausius in 1850, and it pretty much states that energy cannot be created or destroyed, it can only change form. That's a little bit like water. Water cannot be created or destroyed. It can only move through the water cycle. It can be drunk, it can be flushed down toilets, it can be polluted or contaminated, but it can't disappear. It is estimated that in total, there is 28 trillion acre-feet of water on the Earth. The problem is, like the old mariner's saying suggests, the majority of it is salt water. It's unusable. 97% of it is estimated to be salt water. That leaves 3% as fresh water. Of that 3%, 2.5% is locked up, either frozen in the ice caps, or as water vapor in the atmosphere, or it's too far underground to be utilized. So that means only 0.5% of all the water in the world is available for human use, for both drinking and crop production. That's 800 million acre-feet. A tiny portion of the total. So where does Northeast Africa come in? Why Egypt? Why Ethiopia? Well, it's all down to the Nile. The Nile is one of the major rivers in Africa. Africa is pretty well endowed when you look at global basis on its water availability per head of population, but it's not spread evenly over the African continent. For instance, 1/3 of all Africa's water flows down through the Congo. 84% of the Nile's water falls on Ethiopia. The Nile actually goes through 10 different countries. The White Nile originates down in Lake Victoria, the Blue Nile in Ethiopia, and that's 84% of the Nile's water, and they both join up, flow down through Sudan and Egypt. Over 10 years ago, Ethiopia decided to build a dam for the purposes of generating hydroelectric, both for their own needs and to export to neighboring countries. They were desperately short of energy of electric, and hydroelectric is obviously very efficient and environmentally friendly as well. So they built the Gerd Dam, the Great Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, one of the 10 largest dams in the world. The problem is, with a dam, you need to fill it with water, and that was going to come from the Nile. The first treaty over the water in the Nile was negotiated in 1929 by the British, the Anglo-Egyptian Treaty. It was estimated that 84 billion cubic meters of water flowed down the Nile every year. And in that treaty, Egypt got 44 billion cubic meters of that water, so over half of it. The treaty was then renegotiated in 1959 between Sudan and Egypt. At that point, Egypt increased its allocation to 56 billion cubic meters. Sudan increased theirs from 4 billion to 18 billion. That only left about 10 billion, which was taken up by leakage and evaporation. The other 8 countries didn't get a look in. Ethiopia realized that they would have to start filling their dam when it was completed, and they'd need to negotiate with Egypt, certainly, and Sudan, because when you're filling the dam up, you're going to reduce the water flow down the Nile. When they renegotiated that treaty in 2015, Egypt was demanding as much as 90% of the water. I mean, Ethiopia is absolutely dependent on the Nile dam, on the Nile water, sorry, and the dam was going to really restrict its flow. Ethiopia estimated it would take them 10 to 15 years to fill it without having too much an impact on the water flow down the Nile. Well, that's where Donald Trump suggested that Ethiopia needs to be very careful. 97% of Egypt's water comes from the Nile, so they're absolutely dependent on it. And up in that area of the world, in the Middle East and North Africa, there has been wars before over water. The Six-Day War between Israel and its neighbors is often said to have been a land grab, but a lot of people think no, the true reason was water, because at the end of the war, Israel had managed to get hold of all the water flowing down through the Jordan Valley. 97%, as I said, of Egypt's water comes from the Nile. They're absolutely dependent on it. You can understand why they really want to defend their rights to that water. 20% of the world's land is irrigated, but that grows 40% of the world's food. And that's the situation Egypt's in. They're dependent on a lot of water for irrigation and growing food and feeding their people. So Ethiopia needs to be very careful, and they need to negotiate with Egypt and come up with a sustainable solution that doesn't hinder Egypt's ability to feed its people, but allows Ethiopia to fill its dam and start generating electric and bring prosperity to its own country and help out its neighbors with electric. Anyone wants to comment on this? There's a little bit of politics in there, so it might wind a few people up. Put a comment on the post, or you can contact me on LinkedIn. Thank you very much.